The following presentation is a production of Ride the Wave Media.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Practically Magick. You are listening to Courtney Pearl. I'm a pagan witch, card reader, healer, spiritualist, Celtic priestess, teacher, artist, and mystical seeker. I am discovering the true magic of the world and wish to share that with you. Today, we're going to start our episode by pulling a card. This week, I'm coming back to the Witch's Wisdom Tarot deck, and I am going to pull a card for you today that will hopefully give some clarity on life as it's happening right now. The first card I pull here is, in this deck, it is one of the major arcana cards. It's number 10, and it's the Offering. And what I love about this card, I actually had somebody get this card in a reading just recently. And it is in this deck, it is the Pilgrim's Journey. The pilgrim represents the main character or the one going through the journey. And in this stage of his journey, he is making an offering. There is a forest of young trees behind him. And in the foreground is a sapling tree. And he has a pitcher of water, something that he is crouching down and offering to the roots of this young tree, the sapling. And on the sapling, there are feathers and ribbons tied all over the little budding branches on this tree. And what's significant about this for me is that in the forest, in between the forest and the pilgrim character, is a spirit. This spirit kind of represents spirit of the land, or definitely otherworldly figure. It's almost ghost-like, but it has a green cloak and hood, giving the indication that this spirit is from the other world. It's not from here, right? And it's overseeing this offering being made to the forest as sort of a support or trust that this is what's needed. So the message I understand this to mean for you listening right now is that at this point in this journey for you, you are shedding skin, shedding a layer of yourself and giving it as an offering to what greater good is coming for you. So in the seeking of abundance in your life, this means that you are going to need to go through some uncomfortable changes and make that as sacrifice or offering to the greater good. And sometimes going through these transitional phases of life are, well, I'm not even going to say sometimes. I'm going to say most of the time. Most people going through a transitional phase, it's super, super uncomfortable. Let's just be real. I like to call them mini deaths because in life, we're going through these little deaths of our ego. And sometimes they're incredibly traumatic. Sometimes they're just a difficult time, or sometimes they're just the wintering of our lives. The cycles of our lives where you might be in a winter, either actual physical winter or metaphorical winter, where you are cocooning and you're going through a rest. And these moments in life help us to shed what parts of us we no longer need. But it's a painful experience to be able to have something brought to our attention in such a slap in the face kind of a way. It's like the universe saying, you need something different, and I'm going to show you why. So you might be going through experiences that are showing you that, wow, there's really parts of myself that I thought I needed up until now. And this is a great opportunity for me to look at that a little deeper. And I'm being forced to look at it because what I'm going through right now is painful and uncomfortable. And when I look at it, it gives me an opportunity to take back some control over what I get to do next, which is to shed that layer and to align myself more completely with my true self. And because this card has the essence of nature involved, it has the spirits of nature, the fae folk, if you will, overseeing this transition, it means that no matter what you're going through, it's not you going through it alone. That there are forces at work here that are even unseen, whatever that might look like for you. And I'm really excited to take that message into our topic for this week's episode, because we're going to talk about the magic of color. And I want to start with some story time. I recently went to my very first breathwork session. I have done a lot of different healing modalities. I've either been certified or learned in healing modalities like Reiki or emotional processing. But I try to experiment with as many modalities as I can. In my line of work, I get to meet people who do these different healing works, and sound healing being one of that. I want to experiment. I want to try it for myself so I can see what that's like. And I'll be honest, when I signed up to do breath work, I'd heard about it for a long time, but I'd never done it before. And so I guess I pictured it being kind of like beginner's yoga, when all you're really doing is learning how to breathe from your belly, and you sit on a mat and they just kind of like work you through the breath, and they just teach you how to use the breath into your body, and they guide you through that. And I thought maybe it's going to be like a guided meditation. I thought it was going to be very gentle. And I don't want to scare anyone who's wanting to try breathwork, because I really, truly believe in it. But it was a lot more intense than I had been picturing. And it was amazing. It was incredible. So I actually went to a Valentine's couple session with Rhiannon. She is from Peace Through Breath is her place, her thing. And she is amazing. If I'm looking to recommend a coach, she's incredible. She really gave me the experience I needed to have. And I won't go into too much detail on exactly how it works, but basically with very intense breath work where you're doing a certain kind of breath for an extended amount of time and purposely inducing a panic attack, your body is seizing up, you're getting numb. I went into shakes. And again, I'm not trying to scare you. It was an incredible experience, and I am so glad that I did it, because it was an incredibly powerful release for me. You go through these 30 minutes of breath, and then you do a release. When people told me that they had had intense experiences, or that they were sobbing or laughing, or they had this emotional reaction, I think there was a part of me that was still skeptical. And even after everything I've experienced and learned in my line of work, I was like, okay. But I didn't actually think that I would go through that. I thought that I would keep my composure. I don't know what I thought, but the release was incredible. There was sobbing. I'm not ashamed to admit I openly sobbed, let tears flow, things from my past, things from my present, anything that I had ever been through was just all coming to the surface. And it was so good for me to release that. But by the end of the session, when she gets to the part where she asks you to hold your breath, and she guides you through it and coaches you and then gets you ready, and then she says, now hold. And I swear to you, I had a transcended experience where I left my body. I've never tried psychedelics, but I can only imagine that it is something like this, because I felt as though I was in a kaleidoscope, like with all the colors and shapes that swirl around when you're turning a kaleidoscope and you're looking at it through the light and you see all those colors. I saw colors that don't even exist in real life. And this was a powerful experience for me to connect with the work that I do with colors already. It gave me that extra wow factor, that reassurance that color really does play an amazing and important part in energy and in our healing and in ourselves and connecting us to each other. And so that's what I'd like to talk about today. As we get into our episode and we talk about the importance of color, I want to be very clear that color is just another connection to energy. That because color are wavelengths of certain degrees, they all incorporate and connect with one another, as I will talk about as we go through this. Let me talk about sound healing first, because there is a lot of really cool research coming out in the academic and scholarly fields. Psychologists, I've even seen some videos put out by people doing their doctorate thesis in clinical psychology, and they are focusing on sound healing and how important it is. And I want to do an episode specifically about vibration and how that plays into everything. But I'm going to set that aside for a moment. So put a pin in that. If you're interested in that, we're going to talk about that in another focused episode. But I want to talk about how sound healing has become such an amazing tool that people are realizing have so much effectiveness, that certain hertz or frequencies of music or sound will engage our brain and body in certain ways. So for example, 40 hertz has been really effective in people who have ADHD or who need to focus or to engage their brain in something. They can work and focus on a task much more clearly when they have 40 hertz music playing. And by the way, if you were to listen to 40 hertz music, it doesn't sound like music. It sounds like noise, but that doesn't matter. It's how it engages with your body. So when I was early in my healing education, I did learn first and foremost, one of the very first things I learned was that 528 hertz has been proven to be the same frequency as love. And I think the way that they know that is because when someone feels a feeling love in their body, they can match that frequency, and it matches with the same frequency as 528 hertz. So when they make music to match 528 hertz, and you can actually YouTube that, there are videos people have produced and made that are like hours of 528 hertz music that you can just play in your home. I've used it with my children. I've used it in my home. I've used it with students. I know that when I play that music, it releases tension and builds connection between the people in the environment. It is a really powerful tool. So if you're feeling a lot of tension in the home lately, you're feeling like you just need that extra boost, why not use that as a tool to help you? So my theory here in bringing this forward is, if the frequency of sound is being proven to be so effective, then why not color when our visual senses make up most of the information we take in? For those of us who are not visually impaired, so I'm going to talk about people with color blindness in just a minute, but takes up 80% of the data we take in is our visual senses. So if we are putting that much stock into what we can see, then color is going to have a great effect on how we feel and how we experience the world. And it actually works as an energy and as a frequency, whether we can see or not. So the body can feel the energy of color even when our eyes cannot see it. So that's really important to understand, because color is a deeply powerful connection to energy. It is wavelengths. Yes, we already know this. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some research being done. Well, some articles that have come out in Psychology Today have been really fascinating. Some of them, if you type in color on Psychology Today, it gives you a whole bunch of articles, which is fine. But a lot of them, as I was looking and doing some research, I thought to myself, well, a lot of this is pretty basic information that we already know without needing to be told. For example, color in our environment affects our mood. I don't think that anyone listening would be like, that's not true, or would combat that in any way, because we know that there are certain colors in our decor or in it as we are preparing our environment. We would probably feel, if we painted the walls around us blue, we feel a more calm, serene feeling. We probably wouldn't want to paint the walls around us red, at least not a bright red, because it would be a little aggravating. It would be too intense, too visually intense, and maybe even have an effect on our body that feels like tension. So this is just common sense, which is just colors affect us and colors around us affect us. But I want to talk about an article that I think is specifically related to the work that I do. It says, there's an article, and I will post a link to this article specifically in my blog on my website. When I create a blog for each of my podcast episodes, I always post additional resources and links to things that we've talked about. So please check that out, because I'm going to post a link to evidence that colors are emotions, not just properties of light. And this is a really fascinating article specifically because it talks about how, and I'm going to quote here, quote, visible light is part of the electromagnetic spectrum, which is a gradient of electromagnetic radiation running from shorter to longer wavelengths and includes gamma rays, radar, radio, and microwaves, none of which we perceive as color. So it's interesting to me that those same wavelengths are actually invisible to the eye. We can't see those wavelengths, radio waves, microwaves. We don't see that. In fact, it says something like, if we were to see it, it would just be variants of gray. We wouldn't be able to actually see color from those wavelengths. But there are cone receptors in our eyes, okay? And these receptors translate the message of color to our brain. And basically that translation to our brain are emotional. Emotion being energy. So if that energy and that feeling in our body is translating for us, then that's how we are going to perceive the color. So for example, I'm going to just use this as an example. Let's say that I have a twin sister, identical twin sister. So our genetics and everything are exactly the same. And we're raised in the exact same environment, same household, everything. We're learning colors together at the same time. And there is no way for us to prove that when she sees the color red and I see the color red, we are actually seeing the exact same color. Okay, there's no way for me to know that we're seeing the same thing. However, we are both looking at red, and we both are perceiving red in our own way. So our body's genetics and our evolution and our instinctual subconscious connections with colors come into play here, because red equates the color of our blood. And we know that when we're seeing blood, that's alarming, and that equates danger. And so our bodies react in that way when we see red. So we are seeing red and we are experiencing emotion when we see it. And therefore, that's how the color is perceived. So this is really fascinating to me because it means that there's really no way for us to know that the entire world is looking at the same color and saying that is, we all call it red. Of course, we're all looking at the same red. We're looking at the same color, but we don't know if my twin sister's red is the same as my red or they look the same. But we do know the emotional impact that it's received, the emotional vibration that we feel. So when the this is another quote, when the complex relational logic associated with these distinct clusters of cells is brought into the actively entangled region of the brain associated with consciousness, we have discrete sensations, even if we rarely give a second thought to the components that make up each of these colors, any more than we discern the ingredients in mayonnaise or a piece of Captain Crunch. So it goes on in this article to talk about rainbows and how that even as we perceive rainbows, we are seeing the light fractured by droplets of water, let's say in the sprinkler from the hose. Light is hitting that droplet of water and fracturing it, so we see a rainbow. But the rainbow I am perceiving is based on my perspective, my eye looking at that droplet in that angle, in that time, and place. So that rainbow is just my rainbow. Only I am seeing that rainbow. If someone's standing right next to me and they also see a rainbow, it's from a completely different water droplet and from a different perspective. So each and every rainbow is our own rainbow, our own perspective of rainbow. And someone can be standing on the other side of the sprinkler and not see any rainbows at all because the light would be coming from a different direction. So in short, summarizing this article, colors may not actually be colors or light. They may be our own body's response and receptive or interpretation or emotion to that visual wavelength. And this is important, especially in the work that I do in the healing world, because colors can be associated with the chakras of the body have their own color associations. And we have a lot of the work that I do in my healing work is with color. This is something I personally have always had a deep connection with. When I was a little kid, I absolutely loved rainbows. I couldn't decide on a favorite color. That was never something that was really easy for me because I would be like, well, I like this color because of this, and I like this color because of that, and I like this color because of this. I could never just be like, my favorite color is. And in recent years, well, I will say the only color, if you've listened to previous episodes, the only color I tend to dislike is orange. And I'm going to publicly and officially apologize to Orange for that. That was not Orange's fault for me not liking it. That was my own healing work to do. And so every color has a place in my heart because to me, when they're all together is when I love them most. When I see rainbows, when I see all those colors in some unique way, it's my favorite thing. And that's why now I actually say my favorite color is oil spill because I love that sort of shimmery, I don't know what you call it. Oil spill is my only reference for it. It's like when you see it on the floor of a gas station or something and there's been an oil leak and there's just like, it's this really amazing colorful texture on top of as the light is shining on the oil. I just love that. And so whenever I see that, I buy it. I have cups and hair clips and all kinds of things in prismic colors. So when it came time to naming my business for my work, I thought of Prism Healing because to me, it's sort of like taking that white light that is all of our life force, our being, our entire being is light and shadow. Then what I do is I like to help people fracture that light into all the colors that make up a white light that is us. And when we get to dig deeper into ourselves, we get to see what each of these colors represents for us. So when I am doing a process, emotional processing, the modality is called integrative processing technique because it integrates the left and the right brain. So the left brain is for language and logic. The words, if you go back to our spells, the words are associated with the left brain. The left brain is engaged when we're using words. So we might say, today I'm feeling a lot of anxiety. I'm feeling just very anxious. Well, you've labeled that. So that's half the work. Good job for you. You just named it anxiety, and that is what you're feeling. That's what we're teaching little kids to do when we're raising their emotional intelligence. We want them to label their emotions. So we say, how are you feeling? What is this feeling you're having? And first we're using the words, and then we're integrating it with color. And color is the right brain's language. Color is where the right brain is where our creativity comes from. It is where we express ourselves emotionally. And so when I say to a client, the feeling that's coming up for you right now is anxiety, what color is your anxiety? And by giving it a color, and by the way, there's no right or wrong answer to that because anxiety is going to be a color that may come in many different forms. But it's going to help me track the subconscious and how the subconscious is expressing those feelings and emotions. So I want you to give it a try with me for a moment. If you are listening, if you are not driving, I'd like you to close your eyes. If you are driving, just try to listen and and play along or listen to it later. But I want you to put one hand on your heart so that you can feel the energy vibrating inside your own body. And I want you to imagine that a really heavy feeling you've had today. This is a feeling that we typically avoid at all costs. It's painful or it's heavy. I don't like to say that it's bad or negative because I don't believe in that. So I'm not going to use those words when describing these feelings, but it is usually a feeling that comes to our awareness and we don't want it to stay. We usually have coping mechanisms to get rid of it as soon as possible. So it can be fear. It can be anxiety. I want you to give it a name. What is something you've experienced today that feels heavy? And even if you've moved past it, you experienced it maybe hours ago, it still resonates in your body because we haven't totally addressed it. We haven't totally moved it out. And energy is going to follow intention. So as we intend to move that out of the body, we're going to give it an opportunity to feel it now, to process it, to integrate it, to become aware of it, and to give us an opportunity to move it out. So I'd like you to give it a name. And then with your eyes closed, I would like you to imagine that you are physically pulling that heavy emotion out of the body and assigning it a color. Visualize it as a color. This is something that we do in IPT sessions, is I will have you visually pull it out in every place of the body where it might be heavy, where it might be stored. And keep doing that for as long as you need to contain it, to make sure it's all the way out, and make sure that you actually see it as the color it most feels like. No wrong answers here. And for some people who really have a hard time with the visual of it, you can open your eyes and look around you at the colors in your world right now. And whatever color around you feels like that feeling, pull it out. And then imagine that we're going to be sending it away. And you can visualize that it is shrinking, burning up, getting smaller and smaller until it's completely disappeared. Or my favorite, send it to the sun, all the way to the sun, where it burns up until it's completely gone. Now, this is just a tiny, itty-bitty little experience with this kind of work that I do. There is a lot more involved in an emotional process, but this is going to help you understand the importance and the power that color can really play. And I will say that this is especially effective with children. I do a lot of children's workshops. I teach art lessons with kids where we're using color for healing purposes. And the workshop that I do with children, which is Heart Smart Art, is an emotional intelligence awareness workshop where parents and children can work together on understanding color in their healing. But I have done workshops with teachers, I've done workshops with parents, and I've even done one-on-one sessions with young children where I will give them a box of crayons and we will talk about emotions. And I will have them take a crayon that represents the color they are feeling, and I'll have them scribble and just scribble that color out on a piece of paper until it's completely gone. It doesn't have to be kids that scribble. Parents and adults love to scribble too. But it is really effective with children because children are so young and pliable and their neural pathways are still just forming. So this is so powerful for them to have that experience of being able to move the energy out of their body and put it onto the paper. And you can even, as the parents and teachers, we can get a little clue as to what that might be about. So one example I was doing a workshop with kids in a classroom, and I was having them choose colors that really signified what they were feeling, what they were going through. And we were going through emotion points like fear. What does your fear look like? And we're coloring it out. We're putting it on the paper, put it into a shape or scribble. And I had one little boy who was scribbling out a lot of blue. He just happened to have a lot of blue on his paper. And I was helping the teacher to make awarenesses or connections to that. And I said, so blue often signifies that there is something there that has to do with expression and communication. There's unexpressed sadness, or there's maybe a feeling like he can't speak to what he's feeling or what he wants, that his truth is stuck somewhere deep inside, and being able to speak his truth is not something he feels he can do. And it was really cool because the teacher was like, wow, you don't even know this little boy, but I do. And that's absolutely 100% true of what this child is going through. They knew his circumstances, whether it was with his parents, I'm not sure, but she said that 100% fits. So this is a really powerful activity. And that in and of itself is the magic. Okay, when we talk about magic, we're not talking about just, I don't know, pulling up things, spells and witchcraft and crystals and just like whatever. This is true and real magic that exists in our world. It's studied, it's researched, it exists, it's energy. And I think when we have the powerful tools to access it, when we have the knowledge and experience to be able to work with it, it does work like true magic. Okay. So while I grew up being jealous of like the Jedi Knights in Star Wars, like, why can't I be a Jedi and use the Force? And then I went through that adult period of going, oh, well, of course, that's fiction. That's not real. We don't have magic like that. That's the Force. It's science fiction. It's a nice idea, but it doesn't really exist. And then I started learning about all of this. And I realized the world is full of true magic. And we are all like Padawan learners of this is my nerdy, geeky side coming out. Okay, I love Star Wars. We're all the Padawan learners of Jedi that are learning to use what is the real force, what is the life force and energy of everything around us, including color. And that's why being an artist, I'm really fascinated and love to express that and help other people express that with the power and magic of color. So in this use of color, we have the will, the words, and the way that we are using to create these spells to make magic happen. Color has a play in all of it. So I would like you to experiment with that a little bit. And if you are local, please make sure that you sign up for one of my Healing Through Art workshops, because it is specifically designed to help people, not artists, all people, with a sort of healing experience that allows color to have a play in it. So if you've ever enjoyed a sound bath and you thought, wow, I can't play instruments, but I sure enjoyed and benefited from that sound bath, you would absolutely benefit and enjoy a Healing Through Art workshop that I do, which is painting out those emotional and heavy energies from our body. All right. So that, I hope, was a comprehensive look into the magic of color. And we're going to get to our question from a listener next. This person wrote in some relationship advice. I know this is coming out in March, but we just had Valentine's Day yesterday when I'm recording this. So it makes sense that we're doing a relationship advice question. They said, my partner isn't making time for me anymore. What do I do? And I actually have seen a couple of questions that are along this same line. Something like, my partner does too much of this and doesn't spend enough time with me. Or I want him to do different, him or her, to do different. Like, I want them to change. I want them to show up differently. And I did a video on Valentine's Day on my Instagram. I would recommend looking that up. And it was all about love and relationships. And I really want to keep this idea in mind for people that love is not something that is given. It is something that is felt. And our society has not totally taught us that throughout our lives. We've been watching rom-coms and Disney movies and fairy tales our whole lives. And so we're thinking, oh, all I have to do is find that partner that does exactly what I need and shows me love in all the ways that I want to be loved. And then I will have my happily ever after. But the truth is that in relationships, it's really hard work to adapt our thinking and our perception of our partner and how they're supposed to show up for us. It's part of our healing journey, our witnessing ourselves journey, to be able to say, how do I get my needs met when all I have is control of me? When all I have is my whole world that I exist in. And that is really hard for people who are coming in through codependency patterns, which is something I know a little something about, being that my husband and I had very hardcore codependency patterns. We are still always working through. But everybody has codependency patterns that they're healing from. And part of that is looking at your relationship in new ways, in being able to say, I'm not here to change them to be more what I need. I'm here to change me so I am what I need. It's not their job to fulfill me. It's my job to fulfill me. And that looks like setting healthy boundaries. That means honoring them on whatever they're doing, wherever they are in their healing journey, wherever they are on their path. And also being able to honor myself on my path. So I'm going to talk a lot about codependency patterns again in a future episode. So please stay tuned for that, because I can do a whole hour on codependency. But when it comes to relationships, our healing journey is inviting us in moments like that, when we feel like our partner isn't giving us enough attention, to look into ourselves, to look inward. Now, that doesn't say that you cannot express your needs and desires to your partner. I would like to spend more time with you. Can we set aside some time for that? But I can tell you from experience that saying that and expecting it to happen might often lead to more disappointment. And that's not because my partner doesn't care or doesn't want it. It's that I am in charge of me and I'm not in charge of them. And so in getting rid of expectations and replacing that with anticipations is one of the steps in that process. I'm not expecting it to happen, but I would like it to happen. And I'm anticipating that whatever way it shows up, I'm going to receive it. I'm going to receive the connection with my partner, whatever that looks like. So if you want a little more information on how I interpret that when it comes to the 5 love languages or how to show up in your relationship in that way, please refer to my Instagram and look for my Valentine's Day post, because I did a live on that subject and a card reading to go with it. So bonus, right? Okay. That is all the time we have today. Oh my gosh, I had so much fun talking about colors. Colors is one of my favorite things in the whole world. So my call to action to you today is to, no matter what your experience is with art, and I do not need to hear the phrase, but I'm not an artist. I probably hear it 10 times a day to everybody that I meet. Oh, I could never do that. I'm not an artist. And I'm going to say this one more time for everybody listening. There is only one thing that is required of an artist. One thing. And that's it. One thing. Can you believe it? You listening right now can be an artist if you just did this one thing. Any of the healing work that I do, you can book appointments with me from anywhere. I can work over the phone from anywhere, wherever you're listening. I can work with you. You can also look for my workshops that I mentioned, Healing Through Art and my Heart Smart Art workshops for kids that are coming up soon this month. So take a look on my website and find the tab events, and you will see all of the events coming up. Don't miss me at Biscott's, because I do a tarot for tips one Saturday a month. that I am there doing card readings for anybody who walks into the cafe and is getting a cup of coffee. I'll be there. And then please private message me either on my website, on my Instagram, or on my Facebook. I am Courtney Pearl, and my Facebook page is Courtney Pearl's Prism Healing. And my Instagram is @prism_healing. And you can find me on those and also on TikTok at Prism Healing. So any of those places, you can private message me any questions you might have that I can feature questions from a listener on future episodes. Resources today, of course, were on Psychology Today, and a lot of the information that I learned about emotional processing was from the Institute of Healing Arts. I want to thank Ride the Wave Media, Jess Blaine, for being my manager and producer and making me sound amazing every week. I would like to thank supporters of my podcast. I would like to thank Sarah Elbert at Daybreak Treasures Boutique for featuring me as an artist on her website, and you can look for my artwork to purchase there, Daybreak Treasures Boutique. I am so excited you're listening. Please share and like my podcast. If you enjoy it, share it with friends and family and anyone who might be looking for a little magic in their lives. We'll see you next week. Do art. That's it. It doesn't have to be good art. It doesn't have to be anything that anyone says it should be. It just has to be art. So just do it. So my call to action for you today is to grab a piece of white paper, grab a bunch of crayons, and instead of making a picture, I just want you to make feelings come out of your body onto the paper. And this is especially effective when you're in a fight, flight, or freeze state of mind. So if you are stressed, aggravated, whatever it is, try this experiment. Grab a piece of paper, label the feeling with words. This is my anger. Grab whatever color anger looks like, and it doesn't have to be red, by the way. It can be any color it feels like, and scribble it out of your body. Okay, and I'm going to give some more examples on what colors might be associated with other subconscious beliefs that are running in our body. So, for example, if your fear looks like blue, as I said earlier, that might have to do with your fear of expression, communication. So that's why it can be any color. And I'll give more examples of that in my blog post about this episode and also in my Instagram. And yeah, all of the different places that you can find me, which I will tell you right now is on prism-healing.com, which you can find me for private sessions on that emotional processing. Any of the healing work that I do, you can book appointments with me from anywhere. I can work over the phone from anywhere, wherever you're listening. I can work with you. You can also look for my workshops that I mentioned, Healing Through Art and my Heart Smart Art workshops for kids that are coming up soon this month. So take a look on my website and find the tab events, and you will see all of the events coming up. Don't miss me at Biscott's because I do a tarot for tips one Saturday a month that I am there doing card readings for anybody who walks into the cafe and is getting a cup of coffee. I'll be there. And then please private message me either on my website, on my Instagram, or on my Facebook. I am Courtney Pearl, and my Facebook page is Courtney Pearl's Prism Healing. And my Instagram is @prism_healing. And you can find me on those and also on TikTok at Prism Healing. So any of those places, you can private message me any questions you might have that I can feature questions from a listener on future episodes. Resources today, of course, were on Psychology Today, and a lot of the information that I learned about emotional processing was from the Institute of Healing Arts. I want to thank Ride the Wave Media, Jess Blaine, for being my manager and producer and making me sound amazing every week. I would like to thank supporters of my podcast. I would like to thank Sarah Elbert at Daybreak Treasures Boutique for featuring me as an artist on her website, and you can look for my artwork to purchase there. Daybreak Treasures Boutique. I am so excited you're listening. Please share and like my podcast. If you enjoy it, share it with friends and family and anyone who might be looking for a little magic in their lives. We'll see you next week.